This week, Steve continues his quest to build his own refrigerator, but he'll set aside the main tub for the time being and move on to building the drop-ins that will fit snugly into the lid. After that, he'll work with young Aaron on making a shower grate for the head. And last, we'll hear a bit from friends Pete and Courtney with a bit of news about their boat, Norna.
These are pretty much the finished drop-in lids for the refrigerator. So I got to inlay these little stainless steel latches so that we can lift them out. And they need a final sand, and the wood part here, the cherry, needs to be sealed and varnished. But other than that, as far as I'm concerned, these are essentially done. I just got to do the final wrap-up details. So these were a bit time-consuming to make, and I might have gone a little overboard in making them, which I don't think I've ever gone overboard on anything before. So these will go into the main lid that'll go on top of the refrigerator, and you'll be able to lift this one up to get to the refrigerator section and this one to get to the freezer section. I started with the foam and glued up the blocks that I needed. So there was a 2-inch thick piece of foam that was made of 2 1-inch pieces, and then that got glued to a bigger 1-inch piece of foam. And I used the table saw to cut a slight bevel around all of these. So you can imagine we want this to drop into that lid. So if this is 90 and this is 90, it's going to make that a little tough. Having this at a little bit of a taper, this at a little bit of a taper, it's going to want to nestle itself down in there better. When you go to put the fiberglass on, it doesn't like making 90-degree corners. So we used the Total Fair and just smooshed it into the corners and gave it a sand. And then that gave us a really nice fillet so that when we put the glass on, that flowed down. And the glass is the tricky part. So that is where the devil was in the details on this one. I wanted the glass to come all the way down onto the wood. So I taped the very edge of the wood and then glassed right up and over that, and then trimmed the glass back and sanded it smooth. I used the 2-to-1 high performance epoxy and wetted the foam out and wetted the wood out and then draped it on there, and it is just a ton of little cuts to get all of these to lay down. So what I found worked really well is to glass it and not worry too much about these corners. Sand the glass down and then fill these corners with thickened epoxy. And I just smooshed thickened epoxy in there and then used the Shinto rasp and just shaped it with a little bit of sandpaper and the Shinto. So all of these corners aren't really glassed. They're just like an 1/8 inch thick ball of epoxy. And that seems to have worked pretty well.
Aaron came around to help out and got started with Anne putting on the first few coats of the Total Protect epoxy primer that you've seen around quite a bit. Aaron and his dad have been building their own boat project down the street in their garage.
And you can keep going. See where this is? Yeah. Keep getting that until it looks opaque like this. And I don't see any more. You don't see any more of the underside. And then we'll also hit it again before it's quite thick.
After a second coat was on and before the paint had kicked, Anne removed the tape along the wood. And later Steve would do another round of fairing compound followed by more paint.
Making the lids for these out of the cherry was actually a pretty simple process. I knew the size that they needed to be, and then I went and selected the biggest cherry burl that we have, and I sliced it on the bandsaw to get individual boards. Once the boards were cut out, I ran them through the joiner and the thickness planer so that they were nice and smooth and all the same size. You can see, if you look closely in the corners here, that these 4 pieces of burl are all book matched. So what that means is they all came out of consecutive order out of that burl, and actually all 8 pieces of burl here are consecutive order out of the same burl. So you can see that same dark in the corners is also on this one. So it's kind of neat to be able to get all of the pieces out of that one big burl. Once I had the pieces laid out, I just squared them up so that I could join them all together. And they weren't big enough if I just pushed all the burls to the center. So I cut some more cherry to fill out in between them to push the burls out a little bit. And I chose to glue this up with the epoxy, and I wetted the whole surface out with the epoxy. So I poured epoxy into the joints, pushed all the pieces together, and then wetted out the whole surface. And the reason for that is there's a bunch of voids in the burl, which is really common in burls. And I wanted to stabilize that and fill that. So by wetting the whole surface out in epoxy, we filled a lot of that. That's what all these dark spots are, is just solid chunks of epoxy.
Steve also worked on a black locust grate for the head. Black locust is a good choice here because as far as rot resistance, it performs a lot like teak. And unlike teak, it grows basically as an invasive species in the Northeast. And if you know where to look, you can probably find someone looking to get rid of it.
Listen very carefully. If this board catches, what happens is the blade is going to drag it back. If you grab the board here and that catches and drags back, it's going to drag your fingers through the table saw blade and it's going to cut your fingers off.
Yeah.
And by cut them off, I mean cut them off. You'll go through the rest of your life with missing fingers. Okay. So what I want is don't touch this board until the board gets to about here. So your hands are always going to be back here. And that way, if this gets pulled through, you're not going to get pulled through. Does that make sense? Okay. And I don't want you to very firmly grab this either. As this comes through, just a very light, gentle touch. I'll push it all the way through. And then once it's clear of the blade, you just take that skinny one and set it over here.
Wow! Cool.
Perfect. Okay. Upstairs, next to the bandsaw, you'll find. Oh, got you. You'll find a little work table, and there's a bunch of pieces of burl. Can you go add those to the other pieces of burl?
Okay.
It's on the little table by the bandsaw.
Oh, and after that, I need to go to the bathroom.
All right, I'm gonna put these on the workbench by the sandpaper there.
Yep.
Can you guess what the first task is?
I don't think so. Oh.
made some pretty decent epoxy on our boat.
Oh, nice. Yeah, how's that
We
coming?
done 2 coats on interior, front and back.
Okay. When do you think you guys will launch? Don't you hate that question?
Yeah. It gets tired when my friends ask me that question, so when they ask me, I just say, don't ever ask me that question again.
I usually just tell them when it's done.
Thanks for the advice.
Or in the spring. But you're not specific about what spring. So when do you think we'll get our first real snow?
In a few days.
Yeah, that's that.
But I'm just being optimistic here.
You have any data to back that up? This, we can hang the clamps back up here, and then we'll take this out to the boathouse. A little cleanup to do, but there's our black locust grate. You just go put that up on the workbench on the second floor of the boathouse. What's next? 17?
17 by 1 by 1 of them.
And then there's a trigger. Yep, so bring it. And then just watch this hand and that thumb. Those are the most you're likely to lose. And then that's the one we want. And that we'll hang on to for later. Cool.
I went right through the line, so now there's no line there. Wait, was this one going here?
Yeah, that one's gonna go on top.
And then this one that we cut like that.
That one goes there, right? Measure that. And that's the waist. And I think that's going to be too steep of an angle to cut on that chop saw. I don't think the blade's going to swing over and give us that far of a bevel. So I think we're going to have to cut this by hand. Just clean it up a little bit. go see how that fits.
Ooh. Perfect. Right here.
Okay, and then draw an X on the side that we want the waist.
There we go. Hey! Hi. Hi. Are you ready for lunch?
Progress looks awesome. You having fun?
Yeah.
Awesome. Nice. Whoa. Okay.
So I got the head set up here against the refrigeration unit, what I call the reefer, and just want to see how far the head's going to come out. So our barrel here is a little past 18 inches, so we'll call it 19. And then we've got this board here, which I've put at 19 inches away. So the end of the head is going to be right about here, and I want to divide this between two grates so that the head can stay anchored down and this grate can get lifted up very easily so that we can clean out that drain when someone with long hair is in the bathroom and takes a shower. I personally don't have enough hair to cause any issues. So this is, we're going to look for 18.5 long by about 19 wide, and that'll give us enough that we can trim the edge to meet right up in nice and flush with that backsplash. We're going to have to cut angles on the ends, and since the grate is going to sit up a little higher, it means that those ends are going to go a little bit longer.
Okie dokie.
But we got plenty of here, so I think if we go lay this out, that'll give us 1/2 of the grate. What you unscrewing my vise for?
I'll screw it back in.
Alright.
Up, 2, 3, 4. Up, 2, 3, 4. Up, 2, 3, 4.
Can I send you on another mission?
Yes.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. In the paint and varnish room,
Yes.
when you walk in the door,
Yeah.
there's a big, tall shelf on the right with a whole bunch of stuff in it.
Yeah.
And to the left of that is the window.
Yeah.
And in front of the window is a little low white table with a bunch of stuff on it. Under that little white table, in front of the window, next to the brown shelf, to the left of the door when you walk in, is that little battery-operated circular saw.
Yeah.
Can you go get that?
Okay.
And don't let the wolf out!
You're walking on it.
Really? I thought I was dancing.
Let's get this anyway. Why is the grate there anyway? I mean, I know why the grate's like there, but why would it be necessary?
The grate's there for a few reasons. One is that this shower pan that we made is tapered down to the drain. So if you were to stand on it, it's kind of all angled, and we wouldn't be able to mount the head on it because it would be wobbly. You need a flat spot for this to sit on.
The head?
The head? The toilet?
Yeah.
That's in sailing language, they call it the head.
Mm-hmm.
So when you use the head, you need to crank this handle. And that means that this needs to be about where it is because there's going to be a wall here. So you got to be able to reach in and grab that. And the higher we come up the wider the floor we get. So by putting in the shower pan, putting in this framework that the grate rides on, and then putting in the grate, that brought the floor up a couple inches, which gave us a couple more inches that way, which gave us enough room to crank the handle. And this way, when you go to take a shower, or if you've got, say you're on deck and it's really rainy and gross and you come down and you have all your wet gear on, you can hang it up in here and it'll drain through the grate and go down into the drain. And when you shower, it'll drain through the grate, and you'll have a really nice flat place to walk that's also anti-skid, which will also be really nice. This, especially with having these ones ever so slightly raised like we do, we'll sand them down and smooth it out, but it'll give you a really nice texture to stand on. So when the boat's rocking and rolling, you won't be slipping and sliding on that. It was fun doing the grate with Aaron. He's been coming by a couple times a week and giving a hand. I was really fortunate when I grew up that there was a great-grandfather living on one side and my grandparents living on the other, and so somebody was always doing something. My grandfather was fire chief for Granby's a small town and a small volunteer fire department when I was growing up. So I spent a lot of time in the firehouse and went and fought brush fires as a kid and did all that jazz, and worked at a pretty young age at some of the farms around here, helping to sling hay bales and put up fencing and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of nice to be switching roles there and to be offering that to a neighborhood kid. So it's been a lot of fun to have Aaron come by and do some woodworking projects, teach him how to use a bevel gauge, how to drive the old farm truck. I'm sure there'll be more things to come. But I think it's very true that to raise a kid, it takes a village. And it's great to be part of that village and to be able to offer up what I'm quite sure will be some memorable experiences. It's a lot of fun to have kids' energy around. If any of you hang out with youngsters, you know what I'm talking about. They got a lot more energy than we do.
Pete and Courtney come through about twice a year here to the project, and you've met them a few times. Courtney burned in the bilge dragon back here, and they've both helped us out with various things here. But I've known them a little bit longer than that even. About 7 years ago, when they first came up to Maine to find a home for Norna, their 38-foot cruising boat, where she would be in nice, cool waters that would keep her safe, that she used to be in Florida. We met and we started cruising around together with our friends on Flekkerøy, and I was aboard a boat called Mimi Rose, and we did a lot of tandem cruising together, which was really fun, and we've been friends ever since.
Yeah.
And Pete and Courtney have been looking for the last however long for maybe a place that they could call their own in Maine, and they found it, which means that Norna is up for sale. And you might remember Norna from not too long ago, maybe a couple months ago. We toured their boat. I was behind the camera, so I'm not in the video. But you could see Steve connecting the dots about how a home looks on the water, and you could see Robin dreaming. We just wanted to let everybody know that the boat is available and she's ready to voyage. And Pete, why do you think she's a good boat to cruise on?
Well, I guess because we've gone across the Atlantic 2 times on it, and she proved herself there, and we've come all through the Caribbean and then sailed up here to Maine. So basically, because I've sailed on it for the last 14 years or 13 years, and she's never let us down and just been great, comfortable. And just a joy to sit at anchorage, and always nice and stable, and she just never felt in danger too much. I mean, there's times when,
she took good care of you.
Yeah, she took good care of us.
Yeah. And Courtney, you guys have done a lot of work on the boat the last couple years. It seems like someone would really be getting a lot of that benefit from that work. What did you guys end up doing that you think somebody would really be looking forward to if they got her?
She is in the best shape that she's been in, and we're proud of the work that we've done with her and for the boat and for ourselves even, to make her a home, even more than she already is, because she's very much our home. We've had to rake out the cotton in her deck, which she's traditionally laid. and put new cotton and oakum and Jeffrey's marine glue in the decks, and that was a huge improvement to her there. Right now we're planning
The mast boot.
Yeah, we're gonna sew our new mast boot because it's time to have a new
Just
mast
your,
boot.
you know,
Maintenance
it's been
things.
10 years since we pulled the mast boot off, and we
Yeah.
pulled it off, and it was perfect under there. I mean, Norna never lets us down. Every time we do a project, it's always within reasonable repair, and she's just made out of really good quality material, and that's why she's such a great boat too.
Well, and you guys have been great caretakers.
Yeah, we've loved taking care
A lot
of
of us
her
end
and
up being stewards of our boats. We're not only owners. We feel like we're caring for them, especially wooden boats. And we hope maybe someone out there who's looking to voyage hears this as a siren song and wants to help Pete and Courtney move on to the next great, beautiful thing for them in Maine, and continues to honor Norna by sailing her. So if you want to get in touch with them, there's information down in the description, and we hope you get in touch. And thanks you guys for coming
luck.
by again to help us with things and have our semi-annual visit.
Yeah.
I'll slide down a little bit. This one. So what are you guys doing in school?
A lot.
Well, that's good.
The main lessons in practical arts and reading and math lessons have been very interesting. Like we did counting by 15's hopscotch, which is pretty fun.
Counting by 15's hopscotch. How's
Yeah.
that work?
It works. Well, you know how you have the numbers on the hopscotch?
Yep.
Well, instead of going 1, 2, 3, it goes 15, 30, 45.
Gotcha.
And we say the numbers out loud as we jump.